So happy Easter, or actually happy Monday to everybody. And we are doing it's a several series, and there are 3 previous series, basically around fit and selection for and just MBA programs and selecting schools. Today we are doing the 4th. If you missed the others, you could go to the video description down below, and you can actually work on looking at some of those. But today we are actually going to talk about, and I think you can see my slides. I'm going to check the comments and make sure that my slides are up. It looks like they're up. We are going to talk about specializations. And I actually want to get you thinking about who doesn't like a bargain, right? So in some ways, we're going to go shopping and we're going to look for perhaps some undervalued programs that could be useful to you depending on what you're actually interested in. You know, one of the things that has gone on through this series is this idea that, you know, it's rankings and things that are out there are important, but it's really what you want to do and deep diving into that. And so I'm going to give you some tools to think about how to do that. This slide that I've pulled up here, it's just to show you that, and this is Poets and Quants, and it's actually not, it's actually some information from US News and World Report, but they put out, US News does these rankings and they just updated them for 2025 by specialty function, and they don't cover every specialty function out there, but they do kind of rate in some Poets and Quants areas. So there's 6 areas of specialties that are sort of in maybe, and I'm not sure I fully agree that these are all softer skills, but entrepreneurship, international business, management, marketing, nonprofit, project management. So if those are things you want to focus on in your MBA, this could be, US News could be a good resource to sort of build that school list. On the quant side, you know, they're ranking accounting, finance, information systems, productions, operations, supply chain, business analytics, and real estate. So again, if you're interested in any of those, it really makes sense to look at some things where you deep dive. You can see here that some of the top schools, so, you know, for example, Wharton, Harvard, Stanford, they're rated top in just about every area. So, you know, you're not going to go wrong in all these top rated schools. But again, I'm here to talk about sort of bargains and looking at where can you maybe find a school that isn't as highly ranked, but if it's something that you're really interested in, you can go deeper there. So for example, Babson overall rank is 73. The specialty rank in entrepreneurship is actually number 1. McCombs accounting number 1 in specialty, number 16 overall. Go through, for example, Kenan-Flagler, and we're going to talk a little bit I love talking about their real estate program and deep dive, but 28 in the latest US News and World Report. I don't know that I agree with that, but nevertheless, that's what it is. But in real estate, they still are in a tie for top 10 with number 8, actually tied for number 8. Yale, you know, again, it's always highly ranked, but it's really highly ranked in nonprofit. So these are the kinds of things that you can maybe look at these specialty rankings, maybe find some programs that weren't on your list, and then do some further research. And then there are some other specialty areas that, you know, for example, sports and entertainment, or human capital, or sustainability, social impact. And there are not necessarily in US News and World Report breakout rankings, but I will talk about some places when we talk about where you can look for this, where you can maybe get some more information. One of the places that I like and is very good is our blog. Actually, we do articles. So if you go to our Stratus website and you go to the blogs and search for articles, you can see where we rank, you know, best programs for sports or best programs for media or things like that. So that can be another resource for you. I'm also just going to let you know, and I think that right now in the comments, I just see the the links to previous topics we've done. But if you do have any questions about this topic, questions about anything related to sort of selecting schools and all of this, I will be monitoring the chat as well. Okay. All right. So let's go on and sort of see if there's any. Oh, let me also just while we're on this slide, give you a few sort of things to maybe look at since U.S. News and it's not on this ranking. For human capital, I like Ross. I like Owen Vanderbilt. Ross has a human capital club, and they have this Center for Positive Organizations. So that could be very useful to you. Under sustainability and social impact, Yale, obviously, but Haas is very good. Booth has the Rustandi Center for Social Sector Innovation. That can be very useful for students with those interests. Fuqua, Tuck, Georgetown, Stanford, actually. So lots there. In terms of entertainment and sports media, Stern, if you think about anywhere on the coasts where you have big media centers, so UCLA, USC Marshall, Stern, Columbia, things like that. So it really is especially important, if you want to do consulting or investment banking or private equity, there are a lot of every program's got, and every program has something for all of these. But when you start to get into maybe some more niche areas, this specialty and really digging deeper is really even more important. So I think it's important to kind of, do a deeper dive and really think about who is actually getting jobs. So looking at the employment report, looking at who are some of the employers that are recruiting, and really making sure that there is a pathway for you to be able to get what you say you want to get from your MBA. Okay. So that's all I want to say on that. I see Manuel has a question about clinical engineering. There are some programs, let's see, Columbia comes to mind, where they have a dual MBA engineering track. There may be something that you would want to look at Haas. Obviously, MIT Sloan, with their strength in engineering in general, would be a great community if you were looking to collaborate with other engineers. So that's a great question. And if you have any particular follow-up, Manuel, I'll be monitoring the chat for that. So let me go on to the next slide. I said I was going to do a deep dive, and this is just to show you for whatever specialty you're interested in. So there's UNC Kenan-Flagler, and you can see that in this latest ranking, like I said, they were 28 overall in U.S. News, but they were tied for 8 in real estate. And then you also want to look at the employment report, right? And look that actually, 9% of the class, sometimes it's as high as 10 or 11% of the class is actually going to work in the real estate industry. And just to give you a comparison, so obviously Wharton, very highly ranked in real estate, it's number 1. But in the class of 2024, for the employment report results, only 1.6% of the class was actually going into real estate. Kind of the same thing for Stern. It was ranked number 3, but only 1% of the class of 2024 or 2023 work in real estate. So if you really want to, work in real estate and get a job in real estate, look at the employment report. You want to have a critical mass. You're going to have more traction if you've got other classmates that are also looking and recruiting in the same area. So, sometimes if a school has a really large class size, so for example, Harvard or, Columbia has a large class size, Wharton, maybe those 2%, 3%, you're still going to get some traction because of large class size. But if you've got a school that has a small class size and then, 100, 200 students, and then they have 1% of the class, you're not really going to have a lot of peers. So I think that's a detail that you can be doing when you're building your school research and you're looking at schools to kind of say, hey, let me make sure that the thing I say I want to do that they've got a pipeline of people and courses. You also want to look, and I sort of just pulled from Kenan-Flagler's real estate section of courses offered to see that there's sort of a robust variety of courses. So whatever it is your specialty is, do some of this legwork and research because that's going to help you make sure that wherever you decide to go, that there's courses that make sense to you, that there are classmates and alums that are in that pipeline that you can be talking to and learning from, so that you can be making good decisions about where to go. I see that, Manuel, you put in for international students. So I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything I said about the schools that are strong, for US in engineering. And I think that would hold. But, you may also, depending on where you are looking to work in the world, certainly there could be some really strong programs in Asia that you might want to also look at for engineering and combined with an MBA. So that might be something to look at. And again, if you've got some other questions about other specialties, anyone out there, I am here. For me, it is morning. I know for where a lot of you are in different parts of the world, it could be different. But I'm happy to answer your questions about this. All right. So I'm going to take a little also background on, I talked about US News and World Report. I really do like their function and sort of, like seeing where people work. Ratings you can use. Poets and Quants I also like, because periodically Poets and Quants will do a really nice deep dive on, maybe a human capital or for real estate or again, social impact or media, sports. And sometimes they're reporting on that. And even if it's a few years old, because they may not come to every specialty every year, within, let's say the last 4 or 5 years, you're still, if a school had a lot of courses and a lot of strength and a lot of recruiting pipeline, I think you could certainly use it as a proxy to say, okay, let me see if it still makes sense and is still a good fit for me. So, yes, so that those would be two. I like our Stratus blog actually for specifics about certain, certain functions. We tend to do a variety of those, tracking, schools that are really good at investment banking and helping people make that transition into investment banking if they weren't in investment banking previously, or sports or social impact or things like that. Let's see. Financial Times, actually, they rate on sort of carbon footprint. So if you were really interested in sustainability and you want to kind of get a beginning of how to shortlist some schools there, maybe looking at their specific ratings on that function could be useful. So again, you just want to use some of these tools and really help build your list. And particularly when you are getting into some of the niche areas where you really do want to make sure before you jump in, it would be a real shame to not even think about what you want to do, like what the school has to offer, and find out, oh, okay, I just got accepted into this program and they have, maybe 2 courses that have to do with sports business or 1 course that has to do with sports business, and really think, and maybe, just a handful of people that are going into that and doing recruiting, you're really going to feel kind of like, a unicorn or an outlier, and you're not going to have the same kind of traction that you would. And sometimes it's surprising. So for example, MIT Sloan has a really impressive conference every year that industry practitioners go to around sports business, and leaders are going, and students who are in that, at Sloan and helping to plan that conference can really, make some great inroads with people. And you might, if you didn't do the research to know that, you might just, dismiss a school like Sloan and say, well, gosh, it makes me think it's more technical. I wouldn't have, good success there. So really do look at specialty things. Look at if schools have a center or some kind of conference on a certain topic, because that could be a really good resource for you. So you really want to like cover all the bases. And I think the next slide is just sort of a back to intro. I like to kind of jump right into the material. So this is just a, kind of a brief thing about Stratus. We are actually doing a lot of the presentations on this, finding your school selection. And I've been doing some, and some of my colleagues have been doing some. I have been with Stratus for almost 10 years. Really love the collaboration that we have at Stratus, where admissions decisions are not made by one person. And when you work with us at Stratus, you get basically the same kind of thing, where you're working with your counselor, but you have touch points with multiple other counselors to bring in information that is useful to you at the right time. So I like that. One thing that is also nice for this time of year is if you are looking, and actually maybe people can put in the chat if you are sort of doing some research for round one coming up, which believe it or not, schools are closing out, making round two decisions and maybe some round three discerning right now. But basically, round one is right around the corner. And so this is a great time to be doing this kind of school research, doing this fit. And Stratus has a great option for people in round one. If you do 4 schools with us, if you end up working with us comprehensively, and you are waitlisted or denied at those 4 schools, we will actually work with you for free in round 2. And I love that, because we really want to help see people through to successful outcomes. So that is good to know about us. And again, I really enjoy the work that I do, helping people really come out and figure out what their story is and how to present that in the most compelling way. So that's just a little bit about us and Stratus. I'm going to use this slide as a kind of a deep dive into another area. So I know I talked a little bit about real estate previously, and this is just, these are not the most recent necessarily numbers, but they're not too far off. They're just it's a few years ago. But I want to make the point, and I made this point earlier, but it's super important. Again, look at the number of people that are in a class, and then look at the percentage of the class that is going into a particular industry. So, for example, with Columbia having a little bit larger class size, the 2% of the people that are maybe going into entertainment and sports, still will yield you maybe 17 people that you can collaborate with and learn from. Whereas maybe Kellogg or, at Stanford with a smaller class, 1 or 2% is just going to be less than 10 people. So that's important to look at that. Again, if you're looking at entertainment sports, I talked about how schools on the coast, so you're going to see, and actually I don't see, Stern's not on this slide, but Stern should definitely be in this. Oh, actually it is. It's under NYU. Stern and Columbia. Columbia has a specialty sort of media program, very popular. UCLA, USC Marshall out in the West Coast. Also, it would be good schools. And then sometimes, like Chicago is also another sort of big media market. So it's not that surprising that you see Kellogg show up on this list. And I remember actually when I was at Kellogg, there were many classmates who were interested in sports business and were getting jobs with like the NFL or NBA or things like that. So again, you want to look at that. Then you want to look at, it's really good to look at the kinds of jobs. So sometimes a school will, in their employment report, will go and give a little bit more depth and sort of list some of the employers. For UCLA Anderson, and I did look up their 2024 results in terms of, they had 8.6% of the class going into this entertainment sports. I've actually got a couple clients this year and past years who have sought out Anderson specifically for this. But to look at, some of the employers, NFL, NBA, Hulu, Netflix, Twitch, Spotify. So, you really do want to look at those companies that are interesting to you and, and see, is there anybody going to these places from these schools? You can also use LinkedIn to kind of search on a particular company and then maybe put in, the MBA program that you are interested in. And let's see, does Columbia, have anybody at Disney? And you can kind of look at that and see if there's somebody in your network and sort of use that again as a way to maybe identify how many people are in a certain, network from that program, and really also talk to people who are in the clubs. Who's recruiting, what kinds of companies are actually students getting a lot of internships for in this area. And if these are not companies that are interesting to you, then, maybe that's a good sign that you want to keep looking. And also maybe even in meeting some people who work at a certain company, ask them, are there certain MBA programs where you tend to hire a lot of people, where you maybe have a preferred recruiting relationship or something like that? So those are all good things to think about. I don't know, actually, since Manuel, you are a very, you've been an active commenter this morning. I don't know if I want to ask you if you are comfortable putting in the chat when you are thinking about actually doing your applications. If you have any questions about, again, further research that you want to do in round one, and any specialties, again, anybody else that has any specialty areas, I'm really here to hopefully, answer questions for you, but also in this, just really help you, again, just break that myth that you just can rely on someone else's, just one thing. You really have to do that work for yourself and think about, what is most likely the thing that you are interested in doing, or at least the kinds of problems that you want to solve. And then look to see what schools have those specializations, have the resources, have the recruiting relationships, have the courses and things like that that could be helpful. So happy to answer some questions there. I think I'm trying to be shorter on the number of slides, so I don't have a lot of other slides to share. I will share this one next that just says, again, if you want to do a in-depth consultation with me or one of my Stratus colleagues, you can reach out and let me, I'm happy to do that. I actually had a really nice chat with someone last week who reached out after one of our earlier sessions, and I think I was able to give him some further information. Let's see. Let me scan through and see again if there are any other questions or chats, comments that people have about specializations. So I'll wait a moment or two for that. And actually, while I'm doing that, and again, here's the link for Stratus to reach out if you do want to follow up on something that's more specific to your situation. But again, maybe I'll go back to that slide on the bargains and sort of, who doesn't like shopping, and sort of saying, gee, and not everybody listening, let's face it, not everybody listening is going to have the stats and the profile to maybe get into, top 3 or something programs, and top 7, top 10, whatever programs. So, you can still maybe get a top 10 experience in a program if you, again, a school like Michigan State, I don't usually talk a lot to people about that school, but it's, it's solid. It's got an overall rank of 35, but in supply chain, and that's certainly a really interesting area for people, right? In supply chain, you could have, a really best in class kind of experience there. So don't overlook that, or don't overlook, Georgia Tech Scheller, who's actually climbing up in the rankings, was ranked 21 in the most recent report, and, number 5 in information systems. Or Carnegie Mellon, there's a lot of really good tech resources at Tepper, and to be in the number 1 program for business analytics, could really help set you up for success. And again, it's a top 20 program, so it's a good program, but really the kinds of things that you could be doing in business analytics is just, best in class. So that makes a lot of sense. Again, Babson, and I've had several clients who have gone to Babson, and actually one of my clients that went there for executive MBA has started 2 companies since he got out of the program just in the last 2 years. So really lots of digging that you can do. And this is just a sampling of it, but you can certainly start with the U.S. News and World Report and go in by specialty for, seeing who's ranked. And it's just a nice way to kind of maybe broaden your list and thinking, and be able to perhaps, add some schools to your list that you hadn't thought of and actually might really help you get where you want to go. So I don't see anything else. Oh, okay. I do see something. Hold on. So I tried program, not an MBA. I was rejected for Asian Business School. I'm 41. I'm guessing too. Well, so someone who's talking about being 41 and being worried about, you're not, even though you're in your 40s, if you look at the range, like I remember actually visiting Stanford, and Stanford has a program, MSX program, and I think they said they had a guy in their MSX program that was like in his 60s. So you're a youngster by that comparison. While there's not going to be a lot of people in any business school, they're going to be in full time in their 40s. There's always going to be a few. And so I wouldn't, if you feel good about your health and your prospects to be working, perhaps into your 70s, then you still have 30 years to sort of, get value out of that investment. So I would never discourage someone from getting more education. You might want to look at European programs because the average age of people in European programs is a little bit older. I, again, would maybe encourage you to look at a few of the specialty, like Sloan Fellows or MSX, where you're going to have people that are perhaps, a little bit higher age group if you want to do a full-time immersive program, or look at doing an executive MBA, or, because they're in the executive MBA program, really, I think 40s could be, a sweet spot for a lot of them. You certainly won't be too far off. So I would not say that you're not out of range. You're never expired unless you choose to expire. So I would say keep looking. And then I have another question. As a decade as a clinical engineer, I'm trying to get an MBA related to healthcare. Oh, actually, and STEM emphasis. And actually, that is I should have mentioned that healthcare is also, a really important specialty area. And the clue that I would give you for healthcare is also to look at schools that are in major health sort of meccas, if you will. And so like Boston, has just some great hospitals and great healthcare resources. So obviously that would make Harvard and Sloan schools that you would want to look at. Wharton has a healthcare management program that's highly regarded. So that would make sense to look at, again, major healthcare in Chicago. So looking at Booth and Kellogg makes a lot of sense. On the West Coast, certainly, San Francisco, Haas, so Stanford, there's a major Durham, North Carolina is called the City of Medicine. And right next door is UNC Kenan-Flagler. And certainly between those two major hospital centers, UNC and Fuqua or Duke Fuqua, a lot of innovation going on in healthcare. So you should definitely look there. Let me see if I can right now some job openings, but don't prefer employees who will require visa sponsorship. And so, and so again, for international students who want to avoid any kind of uncertainty around visa, then I also would suggest you look at, some of the programs in Asia or in Europe or in Canada. And actually in visiting some of the European programs last year, definitely look at HEC Paris, look at INSEAD, look at LBS. So I think there are definitely options out there for you. And I think this also, with this uncertainty that's going on in the world, I'm seeing a trend, and I think this makes sense. And maybe it used to be that people would be like, I'm only focusing on, US programs. I'm only applying to US programs, or I'm only applying to Canadian programs, whatever. And now I have more of a mix of people that are like, well, I want to see what my options are in the US. So I'm going to apply to these programs, but I also want to see what my options are, in Europe. And I'm going to apply to a certain number of European programs, and maybe look and see what a couple options in Canada are. Certainly Rotman, and I've visited that program, and it's super impressive. So sometimes just in uncertainty, right? And also when you're applying right now, the world could look very different by the time you would matriculate in. So just to kind of put in your pipeline the options to consider getting an MBA and sort of giving yourself options in multiple countries, it makes a lot of sense to do that right now, frankly. And so, do that. And again, Financial Times, The Economist, they have some really good rankings that sort of cover the world. So that if you're thinking about doing that, it could make a lot of sense to add in, that strategy. And again, I'm seeing that as more people are doing that. So that's a great question. And again, thank you for adding healthcare, because that's a really important area. And it's interesting that they don't, U.S. News and World Report does not actually break out healthcare as a ranking, but certainly you can, again, looking at where there are major medical centers, that's a good clue, or where there's also major, biotech and pharma. And so certainly in the United States, the Northeast corridor, you're going to see any schools that are in that area of the country going to be very likely have some very good resources. And West Coast, very good resources. So that is a good way to do it. Let's see if I have any other comments. Those were some actually very additive comments. So thank you so much. And to the person who was asking about, I've actually, the other thing that's interesting is schools do talk about wanting diversity. And diversity is also age, right? So not everybody's going to be exactly the same age. Just because they have a profile where, there is an average and there is going to be a median, doesn't mean that there aren't going to be some outliers, and that those outliers they are going to definitely give some good insight to the class discussions. So don't just, don't make a problem, or don't knock yourself out of something just because of something you think. Is it possible to share the resume, ask for advice? What can be a target? Excuse me. Let me get a drink of something so I can not cough. I think for sharing a resume, I don't think we have the ability to share it here, but what I would probably suggest for that particular question is go ahead and let me advance. Go ahead and you can scan here for a free consultation, and you can share your resume, and then I can actually spend 30 minutes really talking about your particular case. Or if you see one of my colleagues when you look to schedule and you feel like they have a background that fits, then definitely feel free to do that. Let's see. Now that the great question about healthcare, I'm trying to think if there's other specialties that I haven't talked about. I will say certainly the STEM emphasis, and you can certainly check when you're looking at schools in the profile to see if they have a STEM emphasis. A lot of the top programs in the US have sort of quietly added that. So I would say it's more likely that a program does have that, and that could give you some, additional opportunities, perhaps with internships or things like that. But again, there's so much changing in the world right now. It's hard for me to say with certainty what even is going to be, options when you are going in and applying to or matriculating into programs next year. But what I can say is you can plan for uncertainty by sort of just adding to your options. So this is probably a really great year to just make sure that you have identified maybe several regions of the world that could be a good fit for you for your MBA, and then think about, let all of those things be flowing in the pipeline so that when it comes closer to the time where you actually have to make decisions, you can make a better decision because it's going to be closer to the time that you are getting ready to enter the program. I want to also just go back and remind everybody that anything else in the comments, you can go back and see links to earlier programs that we did. So one on, rankings, is that a logical first step? Dream school versus safe school, and how do you apply to that? And then we also did a third session on finding programs that align with your career goals. And this is, I would say, adjacent to that, where we're talking today about really looking at the specializations that a school has and how you can do some further research on those specializations to make sure you end up in a good place. And that's probably, I know we're getting, I think we're, unless I see anything else, I think that, is maybe a good place to end. But hopefully I've given you a few things to think about. Again, maybe look at it like maybe you can't get into the top 5 top MBA program, but within the specialty that's going to matter most for you to get a job and get trained in the right way, you can still perhaps go to a top, 5 ranked program in a specialty. Oh, and before I end, I do see, except for Sloan Fellows, MSX, Kellogg 1 year, Marshall Ibeer, what other full-time programs with mid-career professionals with 15 years of experience? And I don't know if you're talking about just in the U.S., but let me think off the top of my head. You've actually mentioned several good ones. There are some other 1-year MBA programs that come to mind, but it depends on the industry that you're in. So, for example, NYU offers a tech MBA with Stern that's 1 year, and actually, I'm super impressed by Cornell's 1-year tech MBA. So if that is, and again, they may have a variety of, the profile is going to be under 15 years for sure, the average. But that could be, if you want to sort of do a program where you're sort of transitioning into a tech product management role that you haven't been in and you want to set the groundwork, that Cornell Tech MBA program might be a good one. It's 1 year. Emory has a 1-year MBA program that isn't necessarily, you might be again on the older side of that, but again, it might be worth looking into. If you want to, we actually have some really good articles on our website about just 1-year MBA programs and actually kind of thinking for people that are in your age range. And I'm a little hesitant to go to a different browser because I'm afraid I'm going to lose the connection into here. But one thing I would say is maybe sign up for a consult with me or one of my colleagues, and we can send you that material, and so that you can maybe look a little bit more. But that adds a little bit to the mix. Trying to think. Another one that is that I like that it might be one that you want to think about is UCLA Anderson has a FEMBA, a fully employed MBA program, but sometimes people will start in the program and you can keep working, but then I've had a client who like quit their job during the program and then was able to start taking some of the elective classes with current MBA students. And so that's kind of a little bit of a hybrid where maybe if you have some more experience and you want to start your MBA program while you're employed and kind of get some of the basics out of the way, and then do a little bit more of a deeper dive maybe for the last year and take full-time courses with MBA students. I really like the Anderson FEMBA program. So that might be another one to look at. All right. So I think that's those are some great questions. So thank you for people who have commented, and hopefully this has been helpful to other people who are out there. But stay tuned for future sessions, and enjoyed talking to you and wish you all either a happy evening, great day, wherever you are. Looks like we are still live, and I thought we weren't. I'm going to wait. I think we are, unless there's, yeah, I think we're ready to end the session for today. So again, I want to thank everybody for your great questions, and hopefully I've given you some things to think about to help you make really some great selections, and help you make sure that you use this MBA to be a tool to help you get where you want to go.